Well, welcome everybody. It is just past the top of the hour, so I will call to order the special meeting of Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. Please join me for a flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional first people of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on click and Ronnie. Sarah, roll call please.
Mayor Eisenbeis.
Present.
Mr. Mosier.
Here.
Ms. Duncan.
Here.
Mr. Yestad.
Here.
Mr. Christensen.
Here.
Mr. Pike.
Here.
And Ms. Carlson.
Here.
Tell you what, I was really excited when the flags were that way when I just stood up because I had to look around to see where they were in the room. So, gotta have it. Any correspondence or agenda changes this evening? That'll bring us 2 persons to be heard. This is public participation for any item off of tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual. Seeing none, brings us to our first order of business tonight. So tonight we are gathered for our annual evaluations for our municipal administrator and our municipal attorney. We'll start this evening with our municipal administrator, John Leach. He has requested that his evaluation be held in public, as is his right. So Assembly will be gathered in this room this evening to go over comments for Mr. Leach. I've done this evaluation process one of 2 ways. Either we just start and go from one end of the room around, or if someone wants to start out, if they feel passionate about that, we can do it that way as well. I thought about going around the room, and then I looked and I saw a new guy and a new gal, and I was like, well, I put both of them on the spot then. So if someone wants to start, that's great, or if we want to go around the room and let John know our comments, are good or bad, or a room for improvement, or anything that we might have for him.
Put the newbies on the spot.
Go ahead, Corey.
I'll go. I can.
No, I don't care.
I'll go. Just to break the ice. For John, I did not fill out one of these because I just feel like for me it's easier just to more effective to kind of have a bit back and forth and let comments flow from the cuff. I think John is doing an outstanding job. He came here when COVID was just starting. He managed to help him manage an emergency, national emergency situation that was affecting Sitka, helped organize pertinent parties, and that helped this town tremendously. I believe he's also worked closely with the tribe in many ways that were needed, and so it's helped bring down that barrier as far as that administrator's share. I know that he's had difficulties, many challenges with some people wanting certain things and complaining, or complaints and stuff from people, because there's always going to be that. There's always going to be people who don't like you. And that goes into kind of like an area for improvement, I would say. I think you're doing great. I think the staff, majority of the staff respects you to the person. However, I've noticed you kind of get worked up when, like, you're feeling attacked by members of the community, and I think that's understandable. If I was in your position, I would be too. And that's something I have to learn and I have to grow in too as an assembly person, because I get those ugly comments sometimes and those things that are not pleasant. And insinuations from the public occasionally that I'm either corrupt or what have you. And I would just encourage you to continue your journey of learning to not ignore people, but let that frustration go and have confidence in what you're doing. And if you weren't doing well, you would know by now. I believe that this is something we would not wait until an evaluation to mention that. I have confidence in your ability to handle emergency situations. I have confidence in your ability to handle staff, and especially when it comes to trying to restructure, find efficiencies, find people's skills and skill levels, and trying to put the person to the job that they're good at. You're mindful of expenses, extremely mindful of expenses. I really like your focus on asset management. We haven't really had that, and I know that's just a things just starting getting its legs off it. Foremost, I believe that you have best interest in Sitka in mind, and I have trust in your integrity. Are there other things that there are for improvement? I'm sure there are, and maybe when people kind of say things, I'll chime in, but I think you're doing an excellent job, and I think you are one of the best administrators we've had in many, many years. So I'm very confident in your leadership.
Yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, I would actually very closely echo what General was saying. I think it's been interesting that John's attacked some problems that I don't think we really knew were problems, but were. Asset management comes into mind. I mean, we kind of knew we had issues there, but we didn't have a name for it, and it's not. And so it's been good to see John bringing things up that honestly weren't really on my radar. That like, oh, this should have been. So that's a definite plus, and I think he's been a quite good administrator for us. It's interesting. I was thinking about this and how to say it. As far as room for improvement, I'm not sure it is. Just John does some things different than I would do it. John is extremely detail oriented, which is nice. But sometimes I think that kind of gets in the way of the job a little bit. And sometimes sweating the small stuff winds up taking up a lot of bandwidth, if that makes any sense. And I know that John is very much, we're going to go by the book and whatever the laws, whatever the ordinances say, to the letter, with as little interpretation as possible. And again, I was thinking, I'm not sure that's entirely the best approach all the time, but then again, that just might be me and not necessarily somebody else. And I also think that by doing that, John's kept us out of trouble more than once. So I'm not sure if that's an actual, you could do it better, but I sometimes think that, some of the small stuff is not always productive. But then again, I also know that keeps things running. So I think I've got a lot of respect for John. I enjoy working with him. And it's weird talking about somebody like that in the third person when they're right beside me. But it's true, and I think it's important to realize that the shine of the new administrator is long gone. Yet, I think John's relationship with the community and the assembly is still amazingly good. I mean, it's really rare for somebody to be in his position for as long as he has and not have a significant percentage of the population mad at him. And, obviously, I think you could be the combination of Jesus and Gandhi, and still you'd have a bunch of people mad at you. But it's amazing how small that is, in all honesty. So, it kind of feels like he's still new, but he's not on that front. So, again, I have full confidence in John as administrator, and hope to say similar things next year.
Chris?
Truthfully, I haven't had that much time to honestly reflect on all this, so I was actually just writing notes down now. When I ran for assembly, one of the reasons I wanted to get on the assembly was to be able to work with John. Because even as a citizen, I was impressed with the job that he'd been doing. And ever since getting on the assembly, my impression hasn't changed. I've been really happy with the way John handles things and the way that we're going. I've also been, being on the assembly, something I've always been impressed by is how John handles difficult situations. A frustrated public or someone that's, putting the city under fire. And John always addresses it, in my mind, extremely well. I'm not nearly as cool-headed or politically correct as he is, so I've always been really impressed with how he can handle difficult situations. You know, he handles certain things differently than I would, but I think every time that he does, it's for the best. You know, I might handle something a little more aggressively, bullheaded, and could potentially get the city in trouble, where John takes the more cautious route and follows the book. And in the end, I think it's the safest, keeping us, the city, out of lawsuits and out of other people's crosshairs. So, yeah, I've just been really impressed with John, still, and really want to see him stay around.
Eeny, meeny, miny.
I can go. Thank you. So I think, you know, leadership is a tricky thing, and it takes a lot of skill to bring that to, you know, to fruition. One of the skills that you have to have is communication. Another one is vision, and you have to be able to communicate that vision very clearly. And you have to see the big picture, so that you know what it is we're all trying to accomplish. And John brings those things very distinctly to this body, and I think that our community is better because we have an administrator who can do those things, and I think that's really important. So, and it's, as I was doing the intake, you know, as a new assembly member going through all the department heads, it was real clear that they have a great deal of respect for John, they have a great deal of understanding of where he wants to go, and they all feel supported but also guided, and I think that's a really important aspect of leadership, and it's really a good thing to do. I agree about the detail orientation, and I think that is a potential pitfall for leaders, because they can see how to do it real well, but sometimes it's difficult to let other people run with that a little bit. And so I think as something that I've observed over time with leaders, sometimes you have to let other people, you have to be willing to let other people do it less well sometimes to see how you know, that's a learning opportunity for them, and it's also an opportunity to allow other ideas to flourish. So I think that's my only thing to really kind of talk about in terms of where you could look for things to do, would be to, you know, leaders build leaders, and I think that's where you're headed, but, you know, taking too much on yourself is a good way to burn yourself out too. So I've also been impressed that the community seems quite accommodating to you and how you work with them, and I think that's an important piece of it too. So, and your communication is very clear and concise, so I appreciate that.
JJ here. John, with my 4 months of being on this group assembly of the community, I've seen a lot to be impressed by. I appreciate your diligence, your leadership. There's so much that's covered in these 8 pages that we were given to guide us through the breadth of what you do as an administrator of a small city here in Alaska. But it has all the things. It has more things than some large cities with, you know, electric department being part of things. And Chicago didn't have that. Our airport is, our ports, our harbors, all of it is a very wide-ranging skills of the people that you manage and lead, and to get that done daily, monthly, yearly is just a huge task. So thank you for stepping forward and doing it so well. And your character, your vision, your leadership, your reporting, communication, written, verbal, all of that here, budget and planning, it's well executed to a level of detail that I appreciate. But yes, it can lead to burnout, as we all know. But that shows leading by example is a very valid way of leading. giving room for people to grow in their journeys as well is a valuable place to leave some space to your consistency is also something to note, and that being by the book, in my opinion, is a good thing for an administrator, where the assembly gets to kind of have a little more flex in that as the person that does write things to interpret that law, and then we're given the freedom to kind of maybe go beyond that. So I think that balance is well structured for your job as administrator. So thank you for what you do, and I hope to continue working with you.
Kristen.
So I'll go through the tool which was provided to us, and then I think I have larger questions related to John's evaluation and the job description. So I'll go first with what was provided to us. So when it comes to human resources development, this came up a couple of meetings ago that we have about a 13% vacancy rate. If we compare that to when John came on board, we know that's gone down substantially. And I really trust him to build the team that he needs to carry out his duties within the administration. So I think that, I don't have a lot to add to it other than I trust him to go through and administer the policies when it comes to recruiting, retention, all of that. I think we asked him, do you need more money? And he said, I have a plan and I'm enacting it. And so that was enough for me to say, okay, keep doing that. When it comes to leadership, I wanted to note that you're very orderly, which I think has come out in descriptions from others. So you love a process, you love procedures, you're always trying to update those and make sure that they're standard and within best practice. I think that helps you set expectations for those who report to you, and it should trickle down to those who are reporting up the structure. So I think that is a helpful tool. The rigidity, I think, I might have heard something from Tor around the lines of there could be a little bit of flexibility just based off of people's abilities to thrive within a position. So just acknowledgement that there are people who will do well under that system, and there are others that need to you need to go at it from a little bit of a different perspective. And I think you have the ability to be flexible in that way. What I wanted to know for this year was work on the strategic plan. So that was something that you had talked about since I remember coming on the assembly, is that you wanted a guide to ensure that you were fulfilling the expectations of the community, and so you spent a lot of time. So that was a team, that's not you, but I know that you spearheaded and said, we're going to get this passed so that we have a working document to make sure that everything that we're spending money on or time towards, it will be outlined in the strategic plan. And I think that's a really strong document that has helped guide us since we passed it in this fall. When it comes to job organization, I just want to know for the record that I'm so glad that you took a vacation and you are absolutely unavailable to us. That's the way that it should be. And so I think that this is kind of in line with some of the comments. You had to build your team, and I think this is the year that I see you actually trusting your team and going off the grid, which I know for you is really hard to do. So I do applaud that. I've seen growth in that area, and I hope you enjoyed the heck out of your vacation, because you do deserve it. You put a lot of time into this position. When it comes to planning, I just wanted to note how supportive I am of the risk analysis. I think that was an important direction to go. And I think it has also reframed and been a reminder to me as I'm looking at things that I need to keep an eye on that and come at it from a new perspective. So that was something that you introduced and you are regularly bringing up at the assembly table, and I think that is healthy for the discussion. When it comes to written communication, and so this I also heard from others, but I notice when something is not perfect that is very bothersome to you. So again, that attention to detail and putting time and effort to make sure that it is a standard that is acceptable to you. I think I'm highlighting that because that has been so rare that I've seen instances in the packets where something needed to be updated because a phone number was off. So I think that speaks to overall, when we're coming together twice a month and we have sometimes upwards of 600 pages, that very rarely do we have something that needs to be corrected, which speaks to that level of detail that goes into it, the preparation that is expected for it. So I actually thought that that was a strong thing that I wanted to point out. It shows that things are reviewed, they're edited, and that when you publish it, you know it's going into a public space and you don't want there to be errors, and we're not finding those on a regular basis. So I think that really upholds written communication, not just of you, but of your team, and how you guys work together to assemble those. And I just wanted to kind of reframe the conversation. I'm not quite sure how to do this, so I might need Stephen's help a little bit. But I wanted to go into community relations and community reputation, not with examples or an overview of the year, but based off of the documents that were included in the packet. So your job description, setting goals for the upcoming year. I remember I brought up the goals, and so I brought it up last year because in my position, we sit there and go line by line, job description says this, are you doing this? And we kind of go through that assessment, but then we set goals for this upcoming year. I cannot remember how does that work at the table. We have 7 people who come together and we discuss this once, and this is the meeting where we do that. Do we not set goals? And I guess I was trying to sum up, and I think I've heard 2 possibly listed, and I would have a 3rd one.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I don't know that I've ever done that at this meeting. To me, that would almost be a separate work session where the assembly sets strategic goals for the year, because we've done that in the past.
Okay.
But then that would be within the term, well, within the guidelines of the strategic plan as well, would be my thought. But I think that would be a separate work session that the assembly would get together, discuss some goals and
Okay.
mission it or for the next year.
And we've never done that before, so I think what I'm asking is, can we set that up? Because I know we haven't.
Well, the assembly has done it before. Gary Paxton used it to pretty good extent during his tenure.
Yeah, I'm just not familiar with it because we haven't done this. We would come together for this one meeting. So is that a request that I could put on the table and say maybe we could do a work session where we go through the job description, we set goals for the coming year, and
Sure. So,
would that be the appropriate place to do that? Okay, so maybe I'll save the rest of this feedback because I did have goals that I wanted to stress, and I think not having goals, thought maybe we have to relate it back to the strategic plan, and I'm ready to do that. But this might not be the appropriate avenue or time. As long as there is a work session that comes from this, I'm super on board for that.
Crystal, do you mean like goals for him to do for the year, like kind of aligning with the?
Sort of, based off of the feedback. So I'll use yours as an example. So goal number 1 that I wrote down came from you, and it was, how do we support John? Because we've heard that comment previously, like your reactions to the community when you get upset. How do we support him? Other than saying you need to change this and address it, because we said that last year too. Is there a way that we can uphold our administrator and say, you may not have the tools or the skills, but we're going to make sure that you do. We're going to actually set this as a goal, and we're going to check in next year when we evaluate. Because right now, I mean, honestly, if you look at the ordinance that declared it and you look at the evaluation as it stands, this is very baseline. When I look at strategic goal number 2, there's nothing in here. But that's the 5-year direction that we set forward. And I do think, John would have to come forward and say, I need help in this area. That's really difficult for us to put on the employee to do. I think us as the body who are going to make comments and say, I can see an area where you can improve here or here, we need to also put our money where our mouth is. So if we want to see progress and improvement, we set an expectation. This is a goal. Let's check in on it, and if you need support because you don't have the tools, we'll provide it, and here's how. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the goal number 1 that I heard was the reactions and the comments and kind of being able to take feedback. That's 1. Goal number 2, I think I summed it up as delegation. I also put in parentheses attention to detail, and then the flexibility was also a comment. Those aren't goals at this point in time. Those are just comments that I heard. And I guess I'm just thinking back to last year. I remember similar comments. And so I just want to provide more support because I think this is the body that is supposed to do that for our 2 top level people. So for the work session, my goal would be that we update the description and we set expectations through goals for this upcoming year. But I know we haven't done that previously, so I was a little bit confused what that process would look like. So I'm open to further discuss, but.
Yeah, and if I would have had a heads up, I could have given you a little bit more on this. If, according to code, if we are going to update the description of his job, that needs to happen tonight as part of the performance evaluation. However, everything else, I hesitate to give you a solid answer on because it's new to me as well as of right now.
Yeah, and I saw that in 88-363, I kind of highlighted that, and I thought but we hadn't done it previously, so I thought maybe we just don't need to review that in detail and say, is this still what we want to hold our administrator and our attorney to? And my thoughts are you should always be revising, updating, and best practice supporting the leads of your organization. So I wanted to have a further discussion around that, and I apologize, Stephen, for not giving you that heads up.
Yeah, I feel bad not having an answer for you as well. I haven't had time. I want to make sure that we're procedurally correct, but we can still accomplish your goals because they're great goals. When you give someone a tasking, you should follow up and give them the tools to accomplish it as opposed to simple lip service. I don't have anything better for you right now, unfortunately, but we can figure that out.
And I didn't even mention what my goal was, but I think I would frame it around supporting outreach and understanding of our diverse community. I think that the support behind that would be strategic goal number 2, and I of course went back to the budget proposals that came through and sort of was trying to get a feel for whether or not that speaks in the same way to me as it reads. And I know that there are different ways to interpret that, but I think in my position, it's my job to speak to those issues, and so you guys can see what my goal is. My goal was during the budget period to basically put in that we would get training, so that he reports to us. We set the tone of the city. And so that was something that was approved as part of that budget, and I thank all of you for being supportive of that because I think that's important. Within that, though, I was also thinking about John and the leadership that we demand as far as outreach in that area, and I think that John could use support, not just me saying this needs to be worked on. So again, my comments for John, what a year. I think I tried to highlight and uplift the things that I think went really well, and I would love to set goals because I think I'm just thinking about myself. So ours is on the fiscal year, so my evaluation happens in October. My supervisor reached out to me 2 weeks ago and said, here are the goals you set for yourself, where are you at on this? And so it's holding me accountable, which made me realize how helpful that is. That sets the direction that I go, and I apologize for excluding you two. I keep looking this direction, but I think that's a powerful tool, and I know it's hard. So John has discussed the fact that it's not easy having 7 supervisors. And of course we have probably all of our individual goals that we would have for John. And so I think that we have to have this in a forum where we could discuss and figure out, am I way out in left field here saying goal number 3 would be this? We would have to revise that, get that in line, and like I said, put the support behind it. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, and again, I apologize, Stephen. I know the first 2 years were kind of how I understood things to be, but I felt like I would be remiss if I didn't go into the administrator's reporting document or the job description and say, does this need updating? Or we are stating goals at the table, but is the expectation that he will hear it and enact it and we don't have to check in on it? I think it's more supportive if we actually provide a measure to do so. So I'll go ahead and drop my mic for now.
I don't disagree. I'm reading everything I can come up with right now to make sure that once tonight passes, we're not past the deadline, because that's my big fear right now, and I don't have that answer for you. So I'm trying to listen to you because your comments are great while digging through this, and I hope I didn't miss anything on either side of that. So
did you want back and forth, or, Crystal, like, did you want our opinions on some of this stuff, or?
I think I'm done accommodating for the moment, and so, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how do we do this differently from the last 2 years, and I don't want to do something outside of process, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, I think these are good things, supporting the administrator, and all that. Yeah, I think, because, you know, like, my comments were pretty general, but I think to be fair to John, we want to be pretty specific on what we're asking him to do. So my interpretation of right now is we're approving that he's doing a good job. I mean, for the most part, I think that's what I'm hearing. But then I'm hearing from you that you'd like to see some changes, so I don't know. I think Steve was kind of grappling with, is this something we need to address right now?
But I'm also playing in my head, like, we have an established process that the administrator was prepared for. Is this something that we do next year? That we sit down and we have a work session to prepare a new evaluation criteria for the upcoming year? And I don't know the answer to that question either, because it seems perhaps unfair to modify it as the assembly's already gone through a process and the administrator is expecting a certain process. That's another thought that I'm going through in this.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with Stephen. Like, I think the points that Crystal makes, or you're making, are good. Like, you want to see improvement and, you know, help him, give him the tools. But procedurally, it feels like we have a meeting where we give them basically a thumbs up or down, or a grade, whatever have you, but then we're kind of, I guess I wasn't prepared either, like, just trying to decide. I think that maybe we begin a process of looking towards changing the process for next year. I think it would be a little unfair to ask to just say, you're good, but we're gonna have another workshop in 2 weeks or a month or two.
If I can here for a second. You know, I don't know that I see it that way, and here's why. I think we go through this evaluation process, and then the outcome from this is a conversation with John about goals for the years, right? I mean, I think that's what we're talking about here.
Okay.
So I don't think we're talking about blowing this process up. I think we're talking about adding a step after this process that takes what we come up with here and provides guidance and for us to know what John's going to need in order to make that happen. It has to be a conversation with John and Brian if we go through this process with him. So because, I mean, we can't set the goal for them. We need them to be part of that process. But I think that is the step for making this process become more effective. That's kind of what I'm hearing, and I'm in support of that. You know, if we're going to change the whole process, yeah, we can. I mean, this is the process that we're functioning under at the moment. But if what we want to do is take what we've come up with here and turn it into an actual thing where John has clear guidance as to how to perform the goals that we see for him and for the, you know, because he is our representative for the rest of the city workers as well. So, like, what is the goal, where are we going here, based upon what we have to say. So I think, you know, this doesn't have to be negative. This has to be, how does John take this and go forward, and how do we help and understand what we have our responsibility as part of this as well. So, like, what are we paying for? What training does he need? Does he need another person to work with? I mean, that's what I'm hearing, and that's what I think would be a good process.
And I think you said a very key word there for we set goals for what has come out from tonight. I don't want anything new to come out of this next process that didn't come out tonight, because I think this is the forum for that. I know Sarah's been listening intently, and Brian has as well. Brian, I haven't called on you because it feels weird to call on you as my attorney while you're being evaluated as well. But hopefully you'll be able to weigh in on this process as we go forward as well. I don't know if I can catch you before you leave, but understand that I'll need a little bit of help in going forward on that process.
I just, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's you.
Always. See, I'm okay with, like, reviewing goals, but I think I'm just confused as to what goals as far as tasks we would like him to accomplish for the community, or goals for personal improvement? Because I think they are different forms for that. I don't know.
Those do feel different. I think we're supporting the individual who is in the administrator position, right? And our strategic plan helps shape the movement of the organization as a whole. So does that kind of sum it up, that we're not saying, let's ignore strategic initiative 2? That's already been passed by us unanimously. I think this is saying if our expectation is that, for example, going back to yours, of the reactions and feedback and response to the community, how do we provide support to do that? So I want to make sure it's not feeling derogatory. Again, I started off with my remarks and I was upholding our administrator, saying you did great on this, this, and this. As an individual, I know I have room to grow. And I know that the 6 of us all have room to grow too, but we don't report to one another. We supervise 2 individuals who are being evaluated tonight. And so again, I went to the ordinance and I read through the documents, and it says that if necessary, the update happens here. So I know we haven't done that, and again, I apologize for not putting you guys on notice of my intent tonight, but I think this is a healthy discussion. I don't want John to feel like this is because of deficient behavior. I'm not at all saying that, and I want to make sure that that's on the public record. Again, go back to my comments. I think he made a lot of really positive movement. I think we as a body can better support him, and we know it starts at the top, and we are the top. So I think we need to set expectations for ourselves, and I think we step forward. For example, the goal that I came up with setting aside that $20,000 so we participate, apply for, and become a part of that cohort. That's one example of where I think we need to hold ourselves accountable and then hold those below us accountable. So that's the framework that I'm operating within, and just because I kind of cut it off, I want to make sure that I go over my goal. I sort of listed it out, but I don't. If our expectation is that we provide him everything and nothing new comes up, then I better go into detail. I only have one example. I love the strategic plan. I already said that. I think goal number 2 is really the meat of my passion points. So strategic goal number 2, I look back to all of the financial requests that came to us, and we know the process, right? They sit around a conference table and they kind of hash it out and they say, we're going to support this one this year, we're not going to support that one. I kind of wanted to get a feel for how the interpretation within city leadership was going with respect to that goal. And I looked at the 4 that came forward. Of course, we know that we've reviewed and we've supported 2 of those. The other 2 that weren't supported were a request for FTE. We always know services can be improved if you provide more people to provide those services, but I think what I was looking for was anything as it relates to marginalized or underrepresented communities, how we could take that gap and meet it and sort of develop those relationships where they're non-existent. And I know I bring this up a lot, and I bring it up because it's important. I see it and I can speak to it, and so that's why I do. So training, when I'm thinking about goals, when I'm thinking about training and ways that we could support people in leadership, I think even for us as a body, better understanding unconscious bias, privilege, cross-cultural communication, systemic oppression, and then even ordinances, how to review, revise, and recommend ordinances that fairly affect communities equally, you know? So that would kind of be the language around goal number 3. And again, I didn't want to go into detail because it sounds like a work session would be an appropriate space to do that, but I don't want to come out and kind of surprise anybody with that. That's kind of the area that I wanted to support John in this upcoming year. Growth in that area, and it's not because he is deficient or not doing that. I just know that he could better serve the public if we provide him tools, skills, and knowledge to do so. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm trying to be very positive, and I don't want it to be heard that it's not. It's just a new conversation, because the last time all we did was sort of go through the list, and I did that this time, but I think that I know that I am better as an employee because I have goals to work towards, and I have the support from my supervisor to do that. I'm just trying to relay that to John and Brian as well. So.
Okay, I understand better. So what I'm understanding is you would like the city to go in the direction of making some of these kind of changes, like outreach and possible training and review of ordinances, and find if there's any that can be changed or not, whether they can or can't or what have you. And you're hoping John will be the vehicle to you're hoping that we will, as an assembly, ask John, like at a future work session, to do that kind of thing. Is that correct?
I think that we directly impact the strategic goals. They were brought forward, we support them. I think within that, our support goes to leadership to say, okay, we've adopted these, show us how you are upholding and growing in these areas, because this is important to us as a city. I also look at the job description. The last time that it was updated was September 2010. We're now in the year 2023. So again, I don't think it's harmful to look at a job description and say, is this relevant, progressive, and where we need to be as a city? So I don't think that's out of the line to say every now and then we need to just look at it. So again, I don't see anything negative about this, and I feel like people are feeling that it might be. It's not. Updating a job description so that it reflects where we're at as a community, that's stellar. Saying that we're going to set goals that kind of amplify the strategic goals that we unanimously approved, I think that's a positive direction too. So just want to make sure that I see an evaluation as a tool to offer feedback, positive, negative, but also give direction and support in kind of growing as a person.
I understand that. I agree. I mean, all your points are valid. I just see this as something that it would be important that if it's not tonight, that at a future work session, that we give them really specific guidelines. Because what you're saying is new to a lot of people. And a lot of people don't. I'm trying to learn and understand, and I plan to continue. But when we got to be fair so he knows, because as we've said, he's very specific and very, like, we got to give him specific direction on what to do. Otherwise, do you understand what I mean?
I really do, but in fairness, all of these documents were in our packet, so I didn't mean to pull the rug out from under us, but I think that part of our job as an assembly member is to go through and say, does this still read how it needs to? So that's critical of us as a body, 7 of us. I'm including myself in that, and so I'm just thinking all of us report to someone, or we have previously. So we have that experience of when it worked well for us and when it didn't. And I think that we even need to develop guidelines so it's not just fill in the boxes and come here. Maybe this is a new way where we think it, but I don't think it's outside of the ordinance or it's asking, again, the ordinance says that if you update the job description, it's here during this meeting. So I didn't mean to I'm not creating anything new. I'm just asking us to go a direction. And again, I don't have the experience either. I've been through 2 of these. This is my 3rd one. But I want this to be impactful because I think I felt last year that I brought up the concerns that I had, but there was go to it. There was no support. There was nothing behind it saying, here's how we will support you in going this direction. Because again, goal number 2, and I tried to summarize them, and I apologize if I didn't quite get it right, but that's come up before. How are we providing additional support so that if he needs help addressing it, that he has it from the people that are expecting that?
I understand. And I don't feel like you're coming off as negative. I'm just trying to be clear in my understanding, because what you're talking about now sounds like something where, yes, he would be involved, but anything that involves code change, or a comprehensive overhaul of code changes, would be the purview of this entire assembly. Like John would help us, but I think that's I can see that as maybe a subcommittee that's formed that goes forth. I mean, maybe, the training needs to happen, right? And we can do that, the one that we've authorized or the one brought in, but because this is so new to so many people, we need to know what is a good idea, what we can and cannot do. And it just seems like that would be not just a John thing, that seems like that would be an assembly thing. That's what I'm trying
Well, I
to
think we
say.
can continue to debate on the substance of the meeting, which I think we're kind of getting down to now, what we covered in the meeting. I will do my best to get that meeting on the books as soon as possible and go forward from there. But Kevin, did you have anything else on?
I'm good.
Or?
Well, yeah, I think we're going into overall policy things, which is the assembly thing, and it's not necessarily John. It's not a part of the evaluation of John. I mean, if we're saying that John needs to work on his community relations and that's one thing. or that he's not being aware of pressures and things, or of the members of the populace that are not, that have historical issues. I don't go into the details. And if we're saying, okay, we want you to become better educated on this, and we'll help you do that, that's within the review of John's job, of the evaluation. But if we're saying we want the city policy to be changed on, that's outside of this. That's outside of the evaluation. That is overall policy, and that's our job, and we would give John his marching orders. I think John's done a pretty good job of, when we give him marching orders, he does it, even if he doesn't particularly like it. But if we're saying that he's not being as effective as an administrator because he's not either aware or sensitive to some of these issues, that's a little different. I mean, that, one has a place in an evaluation. The other one is our job to tell it. I'm not sure that making changes to the administrator's job description is the place for that. And it's more like, what it boils down to is that, we're going to say this is our policy, and you've got to implement it. If we're saying that John has not been as effective as he could be because of these lacks, so then he needs some extra training, I understand that. It's a very different thing than saying we're going to change our budget cycle. But as far as, if we're upset about what he brought forward in the budget or what had to be added, to a certain extent, we can be upset about that and say, no, we like different, but that's going to always be a judgment call on his part. On what he brings forward built into the budget and what he doesn't. And it doesn't matter who's sitting in that seat. So it sounds like we're talking about overall policy when the goal here tonight is to determine if John needs to work on something or what he's doing well. And so I'm getting a little confused because we keep going into areas that I don't think are part of the evaluation process.
To speak to that, I think both of those are functions that fall within our duties here, and I'm not trying to go astray. So if we want to pull it back to the evaluation itself, I think I spoke to that. I didn't mean to use that confusing example of the budget cycle, but I think that just speaks to growth starts at the top, and we need to support those who we expect to carry out the strategic plan. So I was just using that as an example. I think I've stayed on topic as far as the evaluation itself. I also think if you want to separate those two, I think we need to work on both. I'm not trying to do them both at the same time. I came here to evaluate and offer and set up goals and expectations for this coming year. That would be my goal. And so if I need to backtrack and try to stay within that, I'm happy to. But again, your words were important. There are two distinct categories, and I think our role as an assembly is to address both of those. They don't have to happen at the same time. I just know the time that I've been on the assembly, it hasn't felt like there's been an appropriate time to bring this up after the fact. This is something that we do once a year. And then I just want to play devil's advocate. So if I go into John's office, close the door, and say, I really have concerns and I want to discuss this area, in fairness, he's going to say, yeah, but there are 6 other people that I haven't heard that feedback from. So I can't just jump on board and say, okay, I'm going to carry out what one of my supervisors said. That's a really hard position for him to be in. If we discuss the goals at length like we did and we come up with, for example, 3, I think that he has the buy-in of the body and not an individual, and certainly not 7 individuals who have their understanding of where they want that position to grow in this coming year. So I think that's why we have to do it publicly. I don't know the appropriate forum. Tonight felt appropriate, but I know that I've taken us in the direction that we haven't gone previously. And I appreciate you guys bearing with me as I'm confused through this process, but I think it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, I definitely understand that tonight we do need to set a meeting to talk about goals in the future. I'll work with city staff, Crystal, I'll work with yourself as well in order to get that on the books in an appropriate manner. So I've been thumbing through again. I want to make sure that this opportunity doesn't pass, and I really don't want to see us find something later that precludes. I have not yet, and I don't think that goals would. Just want to make sure that we're leaving here tonight on a solid footing as well. Crystal, anything else on yours? You still have the floor.
And I just want to thank all of you for engaging in the discussion with me. And again, I think I led comments to really uphold the performance by John this year. And last year I was a little bit confused when I left here because I felt like there were goals that I wanted to set at that point in time. And like we said, we do it once a year and then we don't come back. I know that I've benefited by having goals, and so I think we're going to set him up for even more success when we kind of better support him. So thank you so much tonight for that, Ashish.
Thank you. John, I'm going to work through my comments as best. I'm still trying to get through this other one as well, but I'm going to try and refocus on what I have here for you. And I have some things for the assembly as well about John, because I get to see John specifically in a role at conferences that not everyone else does. And so I think I think John knows my feedback, because we do have an open line of communication, but I don't think the assembly gets to see that quite as much. So I'll also talk about that this evening. John, I'm impressed with your growth in your position. You do continue to grow, which shows me that not only you want to grow for yourself, but you want to grow for the municipality, that you're not satisfied being stagnant, and that status quo doesn't satisfy you if status quo isn't working. So I'm excited to see continued growth. I think others in your position, having been here this long, would sit on what they've accomplished and continue to ride that out for the next little bit. But I don't think that is the person that you are, nor the direction you want to go. Once one fire gets put out, I think you go looking for fires elsewhere to put out. And it's been commonly said in the municipality that all we do is continually put out fires, but you're getting there proactively and you're making sure that the tinder is gone, which I do appreciate. I also appreciate your role, or your respect for the role of the mayor. Whether I'm sitting in that seat or whether someone else is sitting in that seat, I know that you understand the elected importance of this role, and that you constantly use that as a sounding board and feedback to ensure that what the mayor understands is the public's will is the direction that you're heading as well. So I do appreciate your utter respect for the role of the mayor, how you, I don't want to say that it's a peer type role, but in a way it almost is like a peer type role. And you continue to use that to strengthen your position as well. I'd love to see and want to see you continue to bring all of your members in on the team. I want you to continue to find the person who might be struggling, and I don't have any examples of this. I don't know that this exists, but to continue to uplift that person and bring those into your role, into their role as well. I think you've done a great job of team building, and you've brought people on board who want to be part of the team, and making sure that everyone continues to grow as an organization. It's commonly been said that you're as strong as the weakest link, or that everybody has a saying amongst those. If we do have any of those, seeking those out and continuing to ensure that they have the tools and that they feel just as welcome as anybody else here. On conferences, I genuinely think, and this comes from multiple years of experience going to conferences with administrators, without administrators, that John is an absolute champion at conferences. And the reason being, number one, for some reason, every coastie knows every coastie who knows every coastie. So no matter what room we're in, he always finds somebody that, oh, well, you knew so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And then all of a sudden we've got a big table around us because they all know everybody and we're all chatting. But John has a way about him that we're easily able to come into conversations. We're able to build relationships with people to the point where some people that we previously didn't even know their contact info is now on speed dial. so that we can call up and, hey, what do you think of the chances of actually getting this grant, or what do you think of the effectiveness of this are? So John has completely changed my view of some conferences because he has become effective. Not become, he's always been effective at those conferences in making the networking part, which I often wasn't sure of, genuinely valuable to the municipality. That's awesome. He's also a much better icebreaker than I am, so I think we make a really good team when we go to those, because once I'm in, I can kind of have a conversation, but he's really good at getting us into that table and breaking the ice there, and then we continue to grow that relationship. So just know that while he's not necessarily right in your purview at those times, he is doing quite an outstanding job. One thing, and this will probably come up in the goal setting as well, but I've spoken to this for an area I think we need to put some more time, energy, and effort into going forward. And to me, I understand right now that the nation is going through a recruiting hardship. It's very hard to find employees, and Sitka, unfortunately, is no different in that. But I'd like to take a little more focus and to see, why are we struggling with retention in the municipality? Is there something going on that we can change, that we can do better in order to retain the people we already have? Because people are our number one asset. Without people, none of anything happens in the town. We absolutely have to do everything we can to retain those that are currently with us. And then recruiting new. Is there something else we can do? I don't know, but I think without the people, I think we've become a handicapped organization, and I don't want to see that going forward. So if there was an area that, John, I would like you to focus on in the next little bit, it would be just, how do we get ourselves back up to full strength here? How do we get our numbers back to where they need to be? Because that also goes to burnout. I've heard in the fire department that they're not necessarily happy about working all the overtimes when they were short-staffed, and so burnout leads to employee retention issues as well. So getting to full staff is going to get us on a much stronger footing there. And then I'll just close with a statement, a sentence. And John, when I say this, I genuinely believe it, and I believe that a vast majority of the community believes this as well, and that is that the city is genuinely better off for having you here. And I think that will continue in the future, and I think that when people look back on your tenure here, that they are going to believe that the city was genuinely better off for having you. So I thank you for your time, and would then open up the floor, John, if you had any comments for the assembly or anything you'd like to say this evening.
Thanks, Mayor, and everyone. I do just have some brief comments. So thank you for the comments and the constructive feedback. I'd just like to simply reiterate to the Assembly and the citizens that 3 years ago I took this job, and I continue to do this job because I'm committed to the citizens, my staff, and the success of this city. I always strive to approach every day's work with my personal values of service, honesty, and respect. And I understand, I know that at some point I will disappoint you or some of the citizens, but that's because I'm a human being. Just understand that I do what I do to try to balance and honor our code, our charter, our strategic plan, and the desires of the community members. And that's no easy task, and it's nearly impossible to get absolutely everything right or to make everyone happy 100% of the time. All said, I appreciate the opportunity to serve, and I'm looking forward to continued service to this great city. Thanks.
Sure, sweet. I also appreciate that. More of that in the future. So at this point, in the past, the Assembly has considered rates of pay as well as benefits. The Assembly also needs to deliberate if we're going to give a satisfactory or unsatisfactory review at this point. Ryan, I said I wasn't going to call on you, but those were the historically used terms. It was satisfactory, correct?
I disagree. I think there was a deviation from historically using a larger scale a few years ago. And when I first came on board, there was a scale of, excellent to poor, all the way down the scale. And then a few years into my tenure here, one of the assemblies decided that it was going to be satisfactory and unsatisfactory. Last year we went back to a scale. You might recall that both John and I had exemplary ratings from this assembly in last year's evaluations. So that's my historical understanding of
Thank you for that. That is helpful. I should have reached out before this as well and made sure I had that locked on. So this is, and then when the assembly would discuss at what level the review would be, at what term, and then any increase in pay and benefits is desired. As per contract, there is, or as per policy, there is a 1.5% pay increase built in to the contract already. So if anybody has anything on those fronts?
I would say that we should at the very least match the raise we gave everybody else. I forget exactly what the percentage was, but we did the unions and things saw some fairly decent hikes, and we should at the very least try and come close to the level of inflation. And 1.5% does not do that.
It does not, correct. And in the conversation I had with the administrator, the 1.5% increase is satisfactory for his needs, and that fulfills the goals of the job. John, you're welcome to jump in and correct me if you like, but that was what I had understood.
And I would like to add to this. This is a difficult place to be because I'm sensitive to the effects of a rising cost of government on the citizen, and I'm okay. I'll put it that way. I'm always going to keep my eye on losing pace to employees that I supervise and losing pace to the inflationary effects of the economy. But that's not necessarily a linear relationship. At some point, we start to level off. So I'm appreciative of anything, but please don't feel any need to look for large increases over what's already programmed.
Of course, you have the floor.
There's times we talked about we can disagree with the administrator. That's one of them. I'm not saying we have to go full on, but I think that 1.5, considering today's economy or today's inflationary rate, is not adequate. And I applaud John for being willing to live with that. But that's going backwards, and I guess I'm not sure where the rest of the body is on this, and if I'm off, that's fine. But I feel like something a little more realistic, and I'm not sure where that number is appropriate. And honestly, at some point, hopefully very far in the future, we're going to have to find John's replacement. And if we're probably, if we keep lowballing on inflation like this, we're going to have some sticker shock when we, So, if I'm alone in this, that's fine. But I think we should have a more substantial, maybe not completely what inflation is, but a little more than 1.5.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tor, I like your, I agree with you in theory. However, and this is what I struggle with, and I'm not putting John down at all, but when you're making more on the higher scale, say one per pie, or say 3% or 4 or 5% of a lot is a lot more than that percent of much less. So I think that's what John's trying to kind of, I interpret what John said, that's kind of what he's looking at, or I think. I would be more in line with, I mean, it's still money out the door, but possibly an increase in vacation days or something, because, they can cash that out, but it's still not cash immediately out the door. It's kind of deferred, I guess, if you think about it that way, but, I mean, unless the body wants to do a more than 1.5%, that's in the contract, but if they want more, I'm not gonna fight that, but because he said that he's okay with it, and because of the reasons he said, he wants to be mindful of that, I would much prefer doing something like maybe an extra week of leave or something. I don't know, I'm throwing an idea out there, I'm not set on anything.
Tim?
I guess what it comes down to me is to detach the job position from the individual at this point in time and say we need to be competitive, right? So we need to be competitive. And we need to not lowball this thing as we go forward. So I'm in favor of matching inflation or even better, to be honest with you, because I think going forward, we need to make sure that people say Sitka is competitive. So, because some people will replace John. Let's not go down that road and say that's the only reason why we want to do that, so we don't see sticker shock down the road. But good grief. We need to be competitive with everybody around us. And that involves more money. And, we're not talking about, we're nickel and diming ourselves here. We're getting value for money. Let's make sure we pay what the going rate is.
It's an interesting note you say competitive, because last year we talked about inflation and how much it was, and the assembly did come back to a lower number. I believe it was 3%, because the 3% of a lot is more than 3% of nothing. So, it's also an interesting take on that. Crystal?
Just a clarifying question, so I'm not hearing numbers, I'm hearing match inflation. What do we think that is? What are we discussing at this point in time?
8? No way. I'm saying that we can't.
I'm just saying
I think John might have some clarifying.
Yeah,
John.
No,
I'd be happy
I
to
was
give-
thinking 5, but again, I don't have strong feelings. I just think that it's not inflation, but it's at least in the same ball field.
So, John, you might have some clarifying.
I do, and I appreciate Assemblymember Pike's comments of separating the position from the person. I think that's very helpful and helped me reframe this as well. Our personnel policies have built in the inflationary raises, and I believe, I wish Melissa was here, but I think the CPIU calculated for this last calendar year was 5.4, but as Tor said, it is close to 5. And I do agree that it is important to keep the position competitive as we're doing with the other positions. We're at, kicking off a compensation study to make sure we are competitive. Obviously there's my personal concern and sensitivity here, but I understand. Again, thank you. You helped me reframe my thoughts on that one because of that.
And I gave you lead days, but you wouldn't take them, so. Tim?
Yeah, I think, we talk a lot about, we've been talking a lot about retention, right? We've been talking about being competitive as a city so we can keep people. I don't think we can remove this position from that same conversation. So I think if we are giving people 5.5% or whatever it is, then we need to do that. And that's where we need to go, as opposed to, is it a lot of money? Yeah, but you know what? We are competitive. We need to be competitive. And if we're gonna say we want to make sure we can attract and retain people, then we need to live, attract and retain people. We need to put the money into it.
Crystal and
Yeah.
Kevin?
John, can I invite you into the conversation, because we were provided a summary that 1.5% felt adequate to you. Can you share a little bit more around that? Because I see you as somebody who knows how to advocate for things that you want, and so I kind of took that and I said, he's good with 1.5%. Where are you at this point?
Well, you nailed it. I mean, that's from my personal comfort level. I'm okay. I mean, that's really the best way I know how to explain it. But I also agree with Assemblymember Pike when it's not just me sitting in this position. At some point, I won't be sitting in this position. And what tool do you have to recruit and retain the next person? And also, how do you prevent the position from being outpaced by inflation or the employees that they supervise? Because at some point, you could potentially see an inversion that could lead to a whole slew of issues. But it's hard to separate my personal from the business aspect.
So here's a question for you, Don. So, conversation, no, by the way, to clarify, I have no problem giving you a raise. I just want to be realistic. So you're obviously in the executive level. Do all executive level employees receive a CPI cost of living increase no matter what? And is there a cap?
The way our existing personnel policies work, for non-represented employees, we have a pay matrix from step A through M. With good performance, employees receive a CPI, whatever the calculated rate is from January 1 to December 31 on the previous year. They will receive that CPI increase just to keep pace with inflation, and then every other year they will receive a step increase on the matrix, which is an additional, I believe, 2.5%, again, with good performance. It goes up to step H, and it caps there. After step H, then it becomes a discussion with me, which in turn leads to a discussion with the assembly if the budget can happen or not. But as far as executive pay, we don't really have it designed what positions are executives, but the only people that personnel policy does not apply to, and that salary is determined by this body, is the attorney and I.
So I'm sorry, I'm just getting to a point. I'm not trying to, I just want to think clearly when we do this, because when you do something, you set precedents. What I'm trying to get at, sorry, I'll reframe this. Because, by the way, you're worth the money. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't set a precedent without thinking about what we're doing. Do, say, department heads, is there ever a point where it says because you say you get $150,000 or more, and you get 5% every year, that can build up really, really quick. Is there a cap or a limit, say, department heads?
There's no cap on inflation.
So it'll just keep going.
Well, it'll keep going up, but 150,000 1 year is not 150,000 in 10 years. I mean,
Say a person's making 150,000, they get a 5% increase, and then that next year, that increase is going to be 5% of the new amount, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
only if that was the calculated CPI, only if that was the reported CPI for the economy.
And there's no cap to that at all.
There's not, no. But
Right,
that's,
okay.
Here's our process.
What's that?
So I can go into history again if you'd like.
Yeah.
So, I mean, last year, the assembly voted for both John and myself to have a 1.5% increase in our salary on a continual basis, so long as we get a satisfactory performance evaluation. That'll be consistent. If we didn't have that vote by the assembly, we wouldn't get that raise because it's not built in the personnel policies. So you can either do one of two things if you want to give a raise. You could just give a one-time raise of whatever percent you just decide to do it, or whatever dollar value on it. Or you could put the interest rate at a different rate and have it a continuing one. So does that make sense?
If I can make a I think, there's one point I'm gonna make, and then I think it might be time for a motion. For better or for worse, we equate money with value. I mean, there's a reason why, you know, it may not make sense necessarily, but one watch costs $50, another one costs 5,000, and I guarantee you it's not that much better. But we equate, that's how we do it. And I know John is saying, yeah, I'm good. But we all, without exception, said very nice things about John tonight. And I think if I made a motion to give him an excellent, isn't that what he said? Exemplary evaluation, I think it would pass 7-0. I mean, even you can be the best ever and still have room to improve. And we need to back that up. And go on. And so, like I said, I'm getting more comfortable with 5%. It's a little under inflation, but it's a nice round number. One time, just speak, you know, because that's the situation this year. Next year, who knows? The inflation rate seems to be coming down, so it might be 2% next year if that's what the inflation rate is, or 3%, whatever. And so, and Sarah might need help here. I move that the Assembly give John Leach an exemplary evaluation and institute a 5% salary increase instead of the 1.5%.
Yeah, clarifying question on the motion.
Clarifying question on the motion. Are you saying this year or every year?
This year. That's what I say very specifically, this year.
Oh.
So would that be 6.5 total?
No,
Or that
it'd be
would-
5%.
okay.
I said instead of the 1%, 1.5. So 6%, 5%, get me confused. 5% instead of the 1.5 and an exemplary evaluation.
So you added 3.5% to the 1% that was
Correct.
already there, so a
Correct.
total of 5%. Okay, thanks.
Is there a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
As moved and seconded to give Administrator John Leach an exemplary review and a pay increase of 5% for the review, for this year's review period. Is there any public comment on the motion? Assembly deliberation on the motion? Crystal?
So I'm supportive of the 5%. I think what I heard is that competitive market, we're going to lose them to other places. We got this nice document that I didn't pay enough attention to. I didn't find the equitable places throughout Alaska to compare their low and high end with what John currently makes. That was deficient on my part. I guess I bring that up because I think it should be a system that we have built, kind of like a process to say, if we want to remain competitive, how do we suss out whether or not we're still competitive? I think we certainly are with the wage that he's currently earning, and we're throwing another 5%. But if we're going to use that as the argument that we need to stay competitive, this was provided to us for a reason. And again, I just apologize because I didn't do the calculations before I came in here. I think that would have been useful, especially as we're looking forward and we want to make that argument as justification that we do go through. And I think there are about 7 or 8 communities in Alaska that have kind of an equitable population range that we could use to figure out, are we outpriced? Are we not meeting the market? That would be something that I would offer for next year. But again, I'm supportive of 5%.
Tim?
Yeah. I mean, this position goes backwards essentially in terms of inflation. And I think that's where I'm concerned. So I'm not saying I don't want to support 5%, but I think, I think we offered, I believe the intent of the Assembly was a 1.5% raise on top of, in value, on top of. So, I guess, we're basically saying this position is going to be worth less than what it would have been a year ago. And are we comfortable with that? I mean, I think that's where I'm concerned. And so, so what would be a better number would be 6.5%, right? So,
Sorry.
because 6.5% includes that 5%, that inflation and the intent of the past, which was to increase by 1.5%. So, I don't want to get hung up on the number, like the dollar amount, because we're talking about being competitive. I actually looked through that. and did the math, and we're in the ballpark. But, is Sitka ballpark, or is that where we want to be, or do we want to be more competitive? And I think, again, the position is worth more than going backwards in inflation. I hate seeing that happen. Whenever people don't negotiate to go backwards, they negotiate to go forward. And the minimum would be to beat inflation. And the intent of the assembly in the past has been to raise it by 1.5%. So that's why I'm at 6.5%. I mean, I'm not going to vote down 5, but on the other hand, I think, if we really want to be where we think we need to be, and we really want to do what we're saying we need to do about being competitive and about retaining people, we need to speak about it in this term. We can say we're taking care of our employees, right? And we want to be able to say that, and that's where I'm at. So that's why I'm at 6.5%, or 6.9% if you want to go 5.4 is our inflation number, because I want to see inflation proofing plus the intent of 1.5%.
So Tim, I can get on board with what you're saying. And then I go to precedent that was said earlier. Are you prepared to do that for all employees on that same level? Because that sets the precedent of where we're at right now. If they're already not getting that inflation-proof plus, are you ready to do that for all city employees in order to increase recruiting and retention?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that because we are at 13% of our workforce is not with us right now, right? So we want to be attractive, and we want to be, but that's not actually part of this conversation, and because this is a different kind of thing. This is two pieces of it. One is the previous assembly says 1.5% seems to be what we think would be a good increase, and we're also talking about inflation proof. So those are two separate conversations, and I'm in favor of both of those things. So I would like to see inflation proofing minimum, and I'd like to see the intent of the previous assemblies to continue a 1.5% increase so we remain competitive going forward. Can we afford to do that for all the other groups? Don't they negotiate? That's the intent of this process.
If I could just give them why I threw that out, because that's what I did. It was a good conversation started.
And Tim, you made actually a really good point that I was rolling over. You said that this isn't part of the conversation, and you're right, I sidetracked the conversation away. So with your comments, make sure we don't go down that same path that I just started this.
I wanted to get it out there, and I was trying to split the baby in half, and read the room a little bit. But if you guys, I'm not wedded to that. It was just, let's get the conversation started, because we were throwing around lots of different numbers. And if someone wants to make a motion to change it, we'll see what happens. And I won't promise I won't be offended, because I just want to get the conversation started.
Tim?
Thank you. First of all, Tim, I want to apologize. I was nodding. That was really unprofessional. I apologize for that. I was getting a little worked up and a little passionate about this. Again, this is no way a ding on John. What I'm trying to put into this conversation's perspective. Okay, we talk about retention and all this, but even I talked to our HR director, Valerie Ruff, and she was mentioning how there's other ways. Obviously, it's not always about money. And the point is, I'm not saying it's a negative way, I completely support the staff. They're worth every penny. I would like to pay John not 10 times, but a lot more than we do. However, I also want to put in perspective that the city employees are some of the best paid employees in town. Okay? And we have taxes that these people pay. So people are paying, a lot of them are not getting as good of a deal, and they're having to pay taxes to pay for this. And I want to keep this perspective in mind. I understand about staying competitive, but we have to keep in mind what the city can afford. And I think that's a very, very important thing to keep in the conversation when we talk about we should do this, we should do this. There's lots of things that we should do, but we have to be realistic as what we can do. That's all I'm trying to say. I am going to vote for 5. If someone makes a motion for increase, I'm going to vote no. But that's me. I've said my piece.
Crystal?
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in, and so I have to first acknowledge that we can do this in executive session where we discuss salary behind closed doors, and it might be more comfortable to advocate. I would actually like that to be higher. John did request that we do this publicly, and so that might make it a little bit more difficult for him when we ask him about 1.5%. He's now speaking to people who are listening to the meeting live, which can be difficult to do. But the expectation is that a body of supervisors were having a discussion with an employee to kind of ask where is he at with respect to the number that's out there. So if I'm struggling, it's because I heard 1.5 seems doable. Again, I'm supportive of the job that he's done this last year, and I want to support him as much. But if I hear 1.5% is sufficient, and then we take that up to 5%, I'm feeling like we're going above and beyond the expectations as he outlined them. Again, me acknowledging that this is all publicly being recorded and broadcast out, and maybe that puts it in a difficult position. But it's not that it wasn't at the request of John that we do this publicly. So I'm struggling because I heard that 1.5 sounded fine, and then we raised it up to 5%, and he's very cognizant of what his employees are receiving. He was also able to look and see that it is competitive within the market throughout Alaska anyways. So I'm having a lot of thoughts. I'm not stuck on the number, but I think that I support 5% for the reasons that I listed.
Yeah, there, JJ.
It is our choice, as the body here, what we give our staff. And I've been in positions where it's like, sure, yeah, pay me what you're gonna pay me. I like having a job, because it's been tough in the last five years in this world. I don't connect directly. He said being comfortable with 1.5, like he's okay, that was his word, he's okay, but he's not good, he's not great, he's not excellent. He's okay with 1.5%. He's okay with that. And if we feel he's better at his job than okay, we raise it to a degree that we think is a healthy place to live in this town by. I think 5% is more than okay, but not great. And considering all of our townspeople, it's tax money, it's a hard value proposition. And 5% kind of balances out a lot of factors. We still can talk about vacation, we still can talk about other things that can compensate. As a salary employee without a clock-in time, you can't give any benefit of half-day Fridays or something like that, but there are other ways to look at compensation. But I think 5% increase in salary is a very good balance of a lot of factors.
Chris?
So, as most of you know, I serve on a couple other boards, and this year we did do some inflation proofing of our employees' salaries, and I did get to see what it did to our budgets, and it definitely raised it rather substantially. But I do believe in it. I do believe in inflation proofing, and we should. But this is the people's money that we are spending here, and most of us aren't being inflation proofed. There are plenty of us that aren't having our salaries go up. Mine's going down drastically. So it's kind of, I do have to look at both ends of it, I guess. And, but, I definitely score John on the exemplary side, and I think he should be compensated better than 1.5%. I could probably be convinced to go higher than 5, but definitely right now, I do feel comfortable with 5 right now. I do want him to have more because I have been very impressed and really happy with the work that he's done. But I do want to be cautious that I don't go get too crazy with the people at Sitka's money. So, yeah, right now good with 5 and could be open-minded for other options, I guess.
Anything else from the assembly on the motion? Okay.
So, what do we just inflation proof that, right? Like, what do we just do that? Whatever that number is it 5.4? I don't even know what the term is. What is the term we would use, CPI?
Term of CPIU.
CPIU. So I make a motion to increase the administrator's salary by the CPIU.
So that'd be an amendment to the main motion. Yeah. So there's on the floor, there's an amendment to the motion to increase the pay wage by CPU.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded to amend the motion to increase the pay rate by CPU. Is there any public comment?
What is that, by the way?
Back to the assembly for deliberation. And does anyone have CPU off the top of their head?
CPIU, I can't remember what the U stands for. I think it's one of those. Give me a second, I can look it up.
Clarifying question.
Please.
So, is that this year or permanently?
This is CPI.
This year.
Did you not have a percentage? Okay.
CPIU is the Consumer Price Index for urban consumers, and ours is based off of the acreage figure.
Do you have that figure? Were you able to find it?
I don't have it, I have to talk to finance, but I'm 90% certain it's 5.4%.
Okay, so that gives the assembly a ballpark then, 5.4.
And I can also tell you that when we put the budget together, that number was applied to every one of the non-represented positions, and just for budgetary purposes, it was also included on my salary as well, but it would be adjusted if anything changed here.
So according to Google, which it's 5%.
Is that for Anchorage?
I don't know. Yeah, it says 5%. I mean, and it's a percentage. Not. I mean, I don't think that it makes a whole lot of difference where you are. If it's more expensive than Anchorage, percentage is the same.
CPIU doesn't adjust for where you're at. That's why we base ours out of Anchorage.
I mean, I just, for what it's worth, you know, like I say, you can probably, but yeah.
So it sounds as if it's a safe assumption. It's in the range of 5.4, 5.5%.
As of February 20th.
Sarah, can I ask a question? What is the motion as it reads?
It's 5%. Yeah.
Okay, well, the amendment right now is to increase the salary to CPIU, or the percentage is to increase the CPIU, and then the main motion is to give John an exemplary eval and institute a one-time 5% salary increase instead of the 1.5%. So the primary amendment would be the CPIU.
So we don't know what the CPIU is because we don't have Melissa here, so we're not walking away knowing what that figure will be.
Correct.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
Tor?
Yeah, I just didn't hear what Chris said. Sorry, I didn't mean that way.
I don't want to speak for you.
Well, I was just saying that I'm uncomfortable not knowing what that percentage is tonight, so I would go back to 5% just because we're all pulling out our devices and not able to come back with the number, and I think it would be close enough.
I mean, the last 12-month period is 5.4.
And that's what I thought I was gonna go off of, but I think now we're researching, is that actually what it is? I would be comfortable,
I'm looking at the government spreadsheet on it.
and that's what I was comfortable doing, so if 5.4 is, okay.
Okay, so the amendment on the floor would be to increase, to to approve a salary increase of 5.4%.
Is the motion or second are okay with 5.4 as opposed to the CPI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're over here.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you.
I read it.
Anything else on 5.4% increase? Sarah, on the amendment to the motion?
Okay, on the amendment to increase, to approve the salary increase of 5.4%. Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
No.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis?
Yes.
And Mr. Yested?
Yes.
The amendment passes 6-1.
We're back to the main motion as amended to give John, or Municipal Administrator John, an exemplary review and increase pay of 5.4%. Any further deliberation? Sarah, if I didn't have that motion right, I just wanted to overview it for the assembly, but if you need to correct me on that, please do. And
No,
then,
you are correct. The motion as amended is to give John an exemplary eval and an increase of 5.4%. Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Duncan?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Yested?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
And Mayor Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 as amended.
Thank you for your time on that one, Assembly. I need a break as well, as I'm sure others do. If we could be back here momentarily, thank you. Our next item of business tonight is the annual evaluation for our municipal attorney, Brian Hansen. As in the past, he has requested this be held in executive session. If I could have a motion, please.
I move to go into executive session under the statutory categories of discussing subjects that, 1, may tend to prejudice the reputation and character of an individual, and 2, may have an adverse effect upon the finances of the city and borough of Sitka, and invite in when ready Municipal Attorney Brian Hansen. In addition, pursuant to customary practice, I move to exclude the municipal administrator and municipal clerk.
Second.
That's moved to go into executive session for Brian Hansen's review. Is there any public comment? Assembly deliberation? Sarah?
All right, on motion to go into executive session, Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Yested?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
And Mayor Eisenbeis?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0, and you'll be meeting in room 7 in the corner room here.
For the public comment table.
Only
It's like, no, it.
outland max is the 2
That's why I